The Changeling, before he died, he whispered something to me. He said, "You're too late. We are everywhere."
Someone's obviously setting you up to take the fall for something. That's what it is. I mean, you wake up somewhere and you don't know how you got there or anything. You're drugged or manipulated or who knows what. Something.
If I report what's happened, you're gonna think I'm a Cylon agent.
Good day and welcome to Battlespace 9, Episode 3, featuring Deep Space Nine's The Adversary and Battlestar Galactica's Water. I'm Carl, and here today with me are our guests. Who are our guests?
This is Jake, Scaltreto.
And this is Ames Lehrmitt.
Yeah, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming by. You are podcasters on A Star to Steer Her By, the classic long-running Star Trek podcast.
Very classic. Quite long running. It's great to be here, Carl. And you've been on our show a few times, so I'm excited to jump over here.
I was just visiting you to talk about Voyager and Threshold.
Oh, man. That was a good one. The funny thing is, whenever we have Carl on A Star to Steer Her By, it's almost always for one of the notoriously bad episodes, and we end up having
my slot, yeah.
the notoriously best conversations about it. So yeah, definitely check that episode out.
Well, you know, we are all kind of theater people as well. You know, Ames, you're a playwright,
Mm-hmm.
and Jake, I believe you're a playwright as well.
I've dabbled. In theater, I'm more of a director-producer-y type, but...
And you make a good prop, too. Man.
I do make a prop.
This man can design a prop.
I certainly want to get to our episodes in a moment, but, you know, since last week's episode, there was a lot of fan backlash, you see. We discussed some of the TV shows that make up new Trek, but we didn't discuss all of them. So all the fans are really angry. None of that is true. I'm just sort of assuming that at a certain point...
I think it's
fans
also
will become angry at me.
Chris and Caitlin, I don't think are as caught up as Jake and I are, because as of date of recording, Jake and I have seen everything.
We've seen it all.
Cool.
Boimler's butthole, a lot of it.
Oh my!
Well, we as of date of recording, this is the first week of Strange New Worlds. And I was curious what you thought of that.
Yeah. So it was interesting because, you know, the finale of Picard came out the same day as the first episode of Strange New World. It was an interesting contrast because, you know, I won't go into details about how I feel about Picard, but needless to say, I was happier with the start of Strange New Worlds than I was with the end of season 2 of Picard. I actually I enjoyed it a bit. You know, I think comparing it to like Discovery and Picard, it definitely had more of that old school Star Trek adventure feel to it. I like that, you know, the ensemble cast really seems to be a thing in this versus kind of focusing on the heroes, which I think is one of the traps that Discovery has fallen into a bit. So I get the sense that maybe that we'll explore some of the other characters on the ship more in Strange New Worlds.
I'm super excited about Strange New Worlds. I think a more episodic nature is going to be its benefit, because I think that's one of the things that has gotten me in a lot of trouble watching Discovery and Picard, is that it just becomes an overflow of information, and I feel overwhelmed by the end of any given episode with, okay, how many things just happened? 100 different things just happened in this episode, and I have to keep track of them, and it feels like homework. Like, if Jake could ask me, do you want to watch an episode of Discovery? I'd feel like I have to do work to watch Discovery.
I'm a big fan of Discovery, even though, like, I admit I don't really care about the long-term plotting. Like, I just sort of go into the moment with Discovery.
That's probably the way to do it.
The thing about Discovery is it keeps improving. It keeps bringing in things that I want it to bring in. You know, the first year I kind of felt like they lost Michael Burnham. Second year, bang, you know, all about Michael Burnham.
Possibly too much about Michael Burnham.
Possibly. But that is, of course, the year where this show's cast was introduced. I really think Ethan Peck is a good Spock. Not to take anything away from Zachary Quinto, but he just sort of looks like he's cosplaying to me.
Yeah, I think Quinto had the look. Like, he could be a young Nimoy, even though we know what young Nimoy actually looks like. But like, Ethan Peck doesn't quite look like Nimoy. But he seems to embody the character more in the way I'd expect. Although I was thinking,
disagree. I'm a hater.
Well, I know. So here's my rationale for saying that. I think Ethan Peck is the youngest iteration of Spock that we've seen, with the exception
other than yesteryear.
Well, yes, other than yesteryear, and with the exception of the Cage, which I believe takes place before Strange New Worlds, right?
Right.
And the way that Spock acts in the Cage is with more emotion. He gets very amused by singing flowers and things like that. And I feel like the Ethan Peck Spock is playing a transitional phase of Spock between that earlier, more jovial, maybe less disciplined version of Spock, to where he becomes in the original series, where he's mostly very reserved. He hasn't done, his emotional purging yet, but he's still, and every now and again he has a smile. But
maybe it's the writing of the Spocks that I find the most inconsistent amongst all the different franchises that you see. Because we obviously have TOS Spock, which is just prime Spock. Just the Spockiest that you can get is Nimoy Spock. And then in the Kelvin timelines, I feel like they just they just started over and wrote what they wanted a little bit. And Quinto does a great job with that. It just happens to not be very Spocky, but it's what they wrote for him.
I suppose we should get on to the premise of the show, sadly. I think that the best thing to do would be to talk about the Deep Space Nine episode The Adversary by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewart Wolfe, directed by Alexander Singer. Take it away, Jake.
Okay, so this it should be noted that this comes as the finale of season 3 of Deep Space Nine, and in season 3 we introduced for the first time the Defiant. So just as by way of background information. We open the episode with Commander Benjamin Sisko, being promoted by his son to the rank of captain. I'm assuming Jake didn't unilaterally decide to make him a captain, that actually came down from somebody at Starfleet.
Okay with that.
Yeah. Jake Sisko just makes all the decisions about who gets promoted on Deep Space Nine. He finally decided his dad was captain worthy. But yeah, so Jake pins the pip on Ben Sisko's collar, and it's a big celebratory thing, and long overdue in my humble opinion. But the celebrations are cut a little bit short because we're joined by Federation ambassador to what we don't know, but an ambassador.
I'm guessing the Zenkethi? Question marks?
Who knows? This guy
Krajensky.
Is there, and he says, "Hey, Ben, we got a little bit of a problem here. There's a Zenkethi homeworld who we've never heard about before, but they're apparently a bordering species. There's been a coup d'etat, and we're just a little concerned that they might get a little I don't know, trigger happy. So we're gonna send the Defiant out to show the flag along the border." And Sisko's like, "All right, let's do it." So we go on the Defiant.
Let's bring the whole crew.
Whole crew, everyone's there.
Damn it, Sisko.
And we're on our way to the Zenkethi border. We got a call from a colony saying that they're being attacked by the Zenkethi. And so we're like, oh shit, we better do something about that. But gradually we discover that, the ship's been fucked with. We're locked out of the helm, we're locked out of this, we're locked out of that, we can't do anything. It was
obviously Eddington.
Right, obviously Eddington. Absolutely, Eddington's over there like sweating bullets this whole time. He's like, did I do that? I don't know.
I'm so used to doing sabotage. It must have been me.
So yeah, it turns out that the ship has been sabotaged.
Listen, all of y'all.
And we're trying to figure out, who did what. And O'Brien and Dax go to check it out, and they open up one of their panels in their crawl spaces, and they're like, "Oh shit! There's these weird little bendy straws everywhere. What's this all about? I didn't put those there." And when Cisco's like, "Well, what happened? What are the bendy straws?" And he's like, "I have no idea. But you know what? The other day I was crawling around in that duct, and I ran into the doctor. So maybe we should ask the doc what's up." But then they figure out, oh, wait a minute, the thing that they were messing with, they're going to get shit all over their hands. So if we scan their hands for that shit, we should be able to figure out who the person was that was messing around in there, because, you can't wash that off. So they do a little scan, scanny poo. They get everybody together on the bridge, and they're scanning everybody's hands, and they scan the doctor's hands, and no, his hands are clean, and O'Brien's a little happy because his boyfriend is cleared of the crime, and then they get to Ambassador whatever his name is and scan him, and what? He's got shit all over his hands. So they decide, oh shit, this is the guy, and then he gets a little smirk on his face, and then he turns into goo and flies up into the ductwork, and oh my god, he's a changeling. Ah, jeez.
Oh no.
So there's changeling afoot. And then we spend the remainder of the episode sort of hunting down the changeling. We pair off into teams because you get to use the buddy system, because you never know. Changeling can be anything or anyone. So we kind of go through the ship. Dax gets attacked and knocked out, which is
probably for the best. This was still weak Terry Farrell time.
Yeah. So Dax doesn't factor much into the episode after that. But Doc's like, she'll be fine. But it's going to take a few days for the drug or whatever it was to wear off. So don't expect any help from Dax. Meanwhile, we're still careening towards Zenkethi space, and at this point, we've decided that the likely scenario here is that the changelings want to instigate a war between the Federation and the Zenkethi in order to more easily weasel into the Alpha Quadrant. So things go along much as they have been. We are sneaking around looking for the alien. Cisco is with some red shirt, and the red shirt gets killed, obviously, and by the changeling. Cisco goes out. Then we find out that this buddy system didn't really work, because now we're in a group of people, and half of them have lost their buddies.
They really don't try very hard to stay together.
Yeah, there's just wait, how long have you been apart? I don't know, a couple minutes.
They're worse than third graders at a dinosaur.
It's bad. So Kira's teamed up with this Bolian guy, and each is convinced that the other one is the changeling. So then they're they happen to notice that, well, when Cisco got attacked, he's bleeding, and he's bleeding on the floor, and Odo's like, oh, you can't be the changeling, because when stuff drips out of me, it turns back into goo, but your blood is staying blood. And they're like, huh? Oh, blood test. That's a great. Odo, you should have led with that. So they all gather in the mess hall, and Julian is extracting samples from everybody, and he tests everybody. And he sucks them up with a hypo spray and checks the bottle, and everyone's blood.
A lot of blood.
A lot of blood. Everybody's blood
Julian.
stays blood, except then we get to Eddington.
I knew it!
That scoundrel. Extract his blood, and it turns into goo!
Always Eddington.
So now we know it's Eddington, which, as an audience member, I knew the whole damn time it was Eddington. But did I? Because as we're leading him to the brig, what should happen? But they bring him to the exact brig that's across the hall from where Julian appears to be locked up in some sort of a brig. And they're like, what? 2 Julians?
Demon Eddington!
And then, of course, the Julian that was taking the samples turns out, well, he wasn't Julian at all. He was the changeling. And he does another smirky smirk and leaps up into the ductwork again. And then Odo also goes all changeling-y and tries to chase him. And it's we're getting really close to Zenkethi, so we should probably just self-destruct the ship. But of course, they've locked down all the escape pods. We can't get anywhere, so this is suicide at this point. And down in engineering, Chief and another dude are really trying to get the job done here. And then who should pop up but Odo and Odo. And what? 2 Odos? Oh God, one of them is fake.
One of them is Eddington.
I'm seeing double.
Yeah, so now
4 Odos.
So we have
4
too many
Odos.
and O'Brien's just like, you know what? I don't got time for this shit. Shoot them both, or that's what he should have said. But instead he said, just point a gun at both of them. And then of course they get the better of the guy pointing the gun at them, and then have a good old fashioned wrestling match. And the evil changeling shoves his hand into Odo's belly and goes, and that's kind of the noise I imagine it made.
That is, yeah.
It's in the quote section on Memory Alpha.
That's right. And he goes, Odo, why are you spending time with these solids? You're so much better than them, you jerk. And Odo's like, no, I'm not the jerk. You're the jerk. And then he throws him at the warp core, which just so happens that they had turned off the force field protecting it.
Oh, that's what was supposed to be. I was gonna say the warp, the whole room is just a nightmare area.
Oh yeah, well that's normally it's not. Normally it's fine, but they specifically had to turn off the force field in order to do the hoodly what they were gonna do to shut it down. And he throws him at the warp core where he gets zapped, the bad changeling that is, and just starts freaking out, and then he kind of half melts and whispers something into Odo's ear, and then dies and turns into soot.
Yeah.
And then we manage to get everything under control. We get back to Deep Space Nine, and Odo's a little shaken because no changeling has ever harmed another, and now he has. Which
is utter bullshit, by the way.
And that dude was totally fucking up with Odo.
Yeah, changelings are really, really rude.
Yeah. So at the very end, we find out what the bad changeling had whispered, and it is, "We are everywhere. You're too damn late. There's changelings all over the Federation. Watch yourself."
Nice. That's a great way to end a season because it gives you fodder for the whole next season. Like, I think that's the difference between this kind of season finale and a 2-parter season finale with the big "to be continued" on the final screen, and oh no, tune in 3 or 4 months and see what happens. Now it's tune in 3 or 4 months and see where this is going, like, for the full freaking show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this episode does a really great job of setting up the conflict for the rest of the series. You know, we've had a lot of Dominion lead up to this. You know, there's been references to the Dominion as far back as I think season 1 even. I can't remember. There's an episode where they get the Tullaberry wine. I can't remember if that's season 1 or season 2. But anyway, they make reference to the Dominion. And so we've been hearing about the Dominion for a long time. We finally meet them at the start of season 3 in The Search. You know, we find out that they are Odo's people. That's where the changelings come from. And then we've had a few, I think, like little Dominion plots throughout. But like, they've always been sort of the big bad kind of hiding in the background. And now I think that this is more of a direct, oh shit, the Dominion is here and we are really in trouble now.
It's kind of a repilot in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because what comes after this is The Way of the Warrior and Worf's entrance to the show. Which just privately, like, that's sort of when I started watching. Like,
it's a good time to start.
Like, for the first time, it is, yeah.
I think most everything that preceded this was the more episodic stuff, and it's this episode that I think it's more that says, like, this is the episode where we decided, yeah, let's sneak some serial stuff in because the producers aren't paying that much attention anymore. Like, they're off playing with Voyager and shit. I think that happened now, but anyway, but. They've got something else to play with, so we can get more serial and kind of like shoot it in under the radar.
I guess I am of two minds of this episode because it represents a lot that I like, but some of the sort of minute by minute stuff is dashed together, and it may just be sort of hard for Star Trek to do a thriller. For some reason, if like the ship was darker. Like, I really think it would have helped some of those scenes.
Yeah.
If, like, the changeling had turned off the lights or something.
Yeah, if there's
that'd be funny.
Yeah.
Or the gravity.
Oh, that's a good... I mean, that would have been completely expensive, but...
Oh, too much.
I mean, I think what we miss in this episode is the real tension. that you would get from a thriller episode, or that you'd expect from a thriller episode, because it takes a long time for the episode even to really get started to the point that we know that there's a changeling about.
Yeah, and then by the end, we're already we're going to have to self-destruct the ship. And you're like, whoa, how did we get here? That escalated very quickly.
Yeah, I think...
Without really understanding what this threat is.
Yeah, I think that the scenes with Miles in the crawl space, when he runs into Julian, like that...
Julian.
Yes. Julian, oh my. I like that. I like that scene. I think it's very. There's some tension in there. There's some suspense in that scene when he hears a noise and he's not sure what it is, and it's a little. I think at that point we've already kind of figured out that there's something not quite right in the episode, and that scene sort of brings us into that. Oh, there's something actually scary happening, but then we kind of drop that. There's not all that much. I don't know, suspense for much of the rest of it.
This brings up kind of interesting question about like doppelganger acting, I think. Not just with Alexander Siddig, but considering what we know happens to Michael Eddington as well. Two different types of doppelgangers happening. And I'm trying to figure out what it is about his performance that makes it just a little off with O'Brien in a good way. And I think that he's too polite to O'Brien.
Yeah, it almost. Yeah, I was noticing that because I've seen this episode several times, so I already knew that was not actually Julian that he talked to, and there was almost something that you wouldn't expect from people who were friends, right? Because they like Julian and O'Brien. I mean, at this point in the show, I don't know if they're quite at the level of friendship that they eventually reach, but there's certainly more than coworkers at this stage, and it was a really cordial sort of interaction. So it's almost like the changeling knew how to be Julian, but didn't know how to be Julian with O'Brien.
Yeah, didn't know how to be O'Brien's friend.
Right.
Which is kind of sad.
And I think that was I think that Siddig played that really well.
Yeah, it's so subtle because, as you said, knowing as we do, because we've seen this episode before, and if anyone listening hasn't seen, this was your first watch of this episode, go back through and watch this Julian scene because it's just slightly off. Like, there's just this subtle weirdness that he kind of exudes. It almost reminded me a little bit of, oh boy, there's a terrible season 1 episode where he's playing, where he's like possessed by this guy named Vantica, and he's pulling this weird cadence, and that one's too much.
Is that the Bela Lugosi? Yeah.
He's basically a vampire.
I love those season 1 episodes that you can just throw out. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of them.
Move along home, nothing to see here. What's great about that Alexander Siddig acting, it's kind of the same thing with the scene where he's injecting the blood, or taking the blood, rather. Like, once you know it, he's a fake. It's almost like watching a shark move. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then like going back and thinking about earlier scenes in the episode, like when after Dax gets attacked, he comes on the bridge and says, "Oh, if I try to wake her up, it's going to cause brain damage." Well, obviously that was the changeling at that point, and
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Shit. Because he wasn't with a buddy.
And we later find out in the episode that the only thing wrong with Dax was that she'd been drugged. And it was the changeling that had drugged her.
Oh my god, Jake just blew this whole thing right up. I never realized that before. That's amazing.
Yeah.
See, I really love the scene when we first realized, let's scan everybody's hands for whatever lingering science MacGuffin is on them. And O'Brien scans Julian and says, "Oh, goodness, it's not you. Good. Hooray." And Julian's like, why are you so happy about this? He said, "Well, I saw you in the tubes before." And you can almost miss it because it's happening underneath scanning Krasinski. And O'Brien says, "I saw you in the tubes." And Julian says, "I was never in the tubes." And they drop that immediately because now there's changelings afoot.
If you had not been paying close attention, you would have missed Julian saying, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I also do super love that Miles, though he doesn't want to admit to Cisco and whoever else was around, Eddington and Odo or whoever, I saw Julian, he was the one in the tubes, there's probably something up, let's figure out our plan. He totally admits to them and, follows the fucking, protocol that he's supposed to. And we're going to talk in a couple minutes in the BSG episode, Water, how the chief there fucking doesn't, and I want to wring his neck.
Speaking of Michael Eddington,
love him.
I kind of forgot how polite he was. I would kind of expect him to be a jerk, given how he is a jerk later on in the series.
Lies. He's the best later on in the series.
Well, he's the best, but he's the
best. I
best
stay on Eddington.
Come on, Javert.
I have no problem with that. Yeah, I mean he is a theater guy, right?
Yeah.
He's one of us. If one of us decided to be a double agent for the McKee, we would probably be like that. We would probably pattern us on.
He's a musical theater guy.
That's true. Although I don't know, because he seems to be more into the book. It would be great if he just broken out into, I don't know any of the songs from that show. Misery, is that from that one? Memories.
That's from Cats.
A song of angry men.
I think it would be great if Eddington was really into Cats.
Yes, I'd be into that.
Cisco, you jellico cat.
As long as he's not into Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah. But so Eddington's an interesting character, knowing where his character ends up, and I wonder how much the writers had decided to do with him at this point, because obviously he was only introduced this season, and he was only introduced, I'm guessing, to be kind of a foil for Odo, because when he's first introduced, it's this sort of things like, oh, now that Starfleet knows that the Changelings are my people, they don't trust me, stupid jerks. And I wonder if the writers had decided at this point that they were going to do more with that character and actually make him a traitor, as they ultimately do.
I feel like Eddington is the rough equivalent of the guy who Lorelai from Gilmore Girls won't end up with, but will spend a season with. He either fades away or he goes out with a bang.
Yeah, I could see that.
And he definitely went out.
Oh,
with
for
a bang.
sure.
Yeah.
And I wonder if because ultimately they do a fair amount with him.
I guess I want to touch on the promotion a little bit, because it's a long time coming, as everyone agrees. Leave it to Star Trek, make a big deal about the promotion, but then write the most prosaic lines.
Yeah. Did you also notice the fake out in the log at the very, very beginning when he says, well, I'm putting in my last log as a commander log on Deep Space Nine, and it's the end of season 3, and I'm sure it was a little fake out. It's oh no, is Avery Brooks leaving? Is this his last? Oh, it's because he's not going to be a commander anymore. It's because he's going to be a captain. Phew!
Yeah, it's such a dad joke. Yeah. I guess I get why he was a commander, right? It was probably to show that he was not, he was being promoted to some degree for something he was not prepared for, right? Like if he was a captain, but he's only a commander. Oh no, how's he going to handle this?
Yeah, well, there was always some critique, I think, of the show, because it was kind of a big deal to have Avery Brooks, a black actor, being the essentially the captain figure of a Star Trek series, but it always felt like a little bit of a slight that he was not a captain. Captain Picard and Captain Kirk were captains of their respective ships on their respective shows, and then Avery Brooks, first black captain to be the lead of a series, but he's not the captain, and I think that this almost rights that wrong in a way, or at least attempts to.
Yeah, to play just the tiniest bit of devil's advocate, I wonder if it's also the writers giving him room to grow, to give a bit of development kind of for somewhere out down the line when you need it, to be okay, at some point we have the opportunity to make this statement and go full captain with it.
I think, Ames, what you're saying makes sense, but I guess I'm just a little bummed out. When they did make that statement finally, they didn't really do anything with it. Like, I don't know what I want exactly, but like
Cisco is our most aloof captain, so
he is.
Underneath all the aloofness, he's happy.
Yeah, and like they make, have you told Cassidy yet? There's that whole little scene where he's like, where I think it was Dax was like asking if he'd told Cassidy about it, and obviously he'd only been in a couple dates with her at this point, yeah. So it's not as big a deal, it seems, to Cisco as it is to the people around him.
Yeah. Here's a question: is being captain for Cisco a bigger or less deal than being the emissary? At this point.
At this point,
way less.
I don't know. So at this point, like I don't know that he had quite reached.
He hasn't accepted
his level of acceptance at being emissary.
I don't think. Yeah, we don't see that until I think the episode Destiny. I want to say.
Yeah.
Where he's kind of like, okay, I guess I'll be emissary. Right now, it's still like, ugh, stop calling me emissary. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's almost like at this point in the series. Being the emissary is sort of something he doesn't want to talk about because it makes him uncomfortable.
Much like being captain is something he doesn't want to talk about because it makes him uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm just saying, celebrate Cisco.
At the end of the episode, we find out that Krasinski, the real Krasinski, never
Krasinski.
Whatever. the ambassador. We find out that the real ambassador was never there. Like it wasn't like he was on Deep Space Nine and got replaced. He was on his way on vacation somewhere and never arrived. So he's in
a cell.
He's
somewhere
he's presumed either dead or captured by the Dominion. But I wonder if the news of Cisco's promotion, because there's no other Starfleet brass at the ceremony. It's like he's the ambassador is the only person not from Deep Space Nine that's there. You would think that if you're promoting someone, you'd at least send an admiral to do the ceremony.
But we haven't met Ross yet.
Yeah, but like Nechayev or somebody else we might have spotted. So I'm wondering if like the quote unquote ambassador, the changeling, was like, okay, I need to get an in with these Deep Space Nine people. You know what? I'm just gonna fucking promote Cisco to captain, and just like, and was like, hey, I'm here, got great news. They do this whole ceremony, and no one's like, it's a little weird. They sent an admiral to do this instead of, I don't know, someone from Starfleet. and then at the end, the Starfleet's just like, hey, just so you guys know, the changeling promoted Cisco to captain, and like, a bunch of admirals are sitting around and like, yeah, I'll allow it. We'll keep it.
It counts. I like your headcanon, Jake. That's pretty good.
I completely believe that, 100%.
And the moment Cisco gets his captaincy, the same day he's ready to put the ship on self-destruct.
Right.
Good work, Cisco.
That's what a captain does. You're not really a captain until you issue your first self-destruct sequence, I think.
Yeah.
Janeway does them at the drop of a hat in Voyager, and it's very funny. I've spilled my coffee. To clean this up, let's go to self-destruct.
Yeah, Janeway and self-destruct is like Worf and ramming speed,
Excellent.
The last thing I wanted to cover is Odo and the Changelings.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure where Odo is in relation to his people. Like every time I understand, he has found himself basically an ocean away, right? Metaphorically. He keeps calling them my people, and they are. I'm not sure how much it should bother him about one changeling never harming another. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it's very weird. And I think what we're getting is that he's very conflicted as a character. Because he's got some sense of loyalty to his people, to the changelings, but it's in conflict with his sense of justice and his sense of not being a dick. So I think
except when he is.
I think he's very conflicted, but I do think that for whatever reason he takes that, and no one has ever harmed one, very, very seriously. And it comes up conspicuously throughout the episode.
I guess when you get right down to it, he's not that bothered by harming a changeling. If I could give one notes on this episode, like I would have liked more in-depth talk between the Changeling and Odo. Like they have an argument while fighting or something. This Changeling has both a lot of information Odo wants, but also obviously is like a threat. So that I would have liked to seen that, I think.
Yeah, I think the fight scene between the Changeling and Odo was a bit anticlimactic, I think.
One last thing, because I happened to re-listen to A Star to Steer Her By's coverage of The Adversary sometime this past week. And we had a guest star on that show, our friend James Rossi. And he kept bringing up that The Adversary is basically the 1982 movie The Thing. Even though they claim up and down, oh, no, we weren't at all trying to make it look like The Thing. Not even a little bit, even though there's whole scenes basically lifted out of The Thing. Which I found very hilarious. So I watched The Thing this week. Just to be like, what is Rossi talking about when he talks about comparing this episode to The Thing? And I will give Cisco a ton more credit than they did in The Thing, and that was that they decided to, do the buddy system so that you could make sure your friend is always with you and not, leave people who might be changelings alone. Smart.
The Thing, of course, was made by future Star Trek cast member David Cronenberg. And I haven't seen it, but
no, I thought
definitely a classic.
The Thing is Carpenter.
Oh,
yeah,
you're right.
Carpenter.
No. Okay, we'll just cut that out. The Thing, of course, was made by John Carpenter, who has never been on Star Trek at all.
Yeah, but it's really cool because it's about a alien being thing that can basically pretend to be a human thing, and like right off the bat, without any fucking science at all, zero science in this movie, guys. They're like, oh, they could be changed. They could be shaped as any one of us and be able to mimic us completely. So let's really just lose all trust in each other within minute one of figuring this out. I mean, it's really interesting from there because you can see the level of tension rise in that, if this is DS9 sort of kind of being a thriller, this is the thriller they kind of wanted to be,
yes.
But with actual science.
So this is the part of the show where we talk about Battlestar Galactica.
Woo!
And this episode of Battlestar Galactica is Water, written by Ronald D. Moore, directed by Marita Grabayak. We open on a cool shot of water dripping onto other water, and it's Boomer. Right next to her is an explosive. Oh no!
Whoops!
She disarms it. Not knowing where she is, why she got there, she hides it, walks through the hangar deck, trying not to look conspicuous, and brings it back into the weapons room, where she sets it back in its proper place. But she discovers that there are 6 more detonators missing.
Ba-ba-bum.
Where's the rest of them? Apollo talks to Adama about last week's episode. He still feels guilty about the Olympic carrier, even though that was 3 whole days ago. Adama tells him some John Wayne stuff. Move on, be a man, and so forth. Possibly Adama is testy because he's doing a military review for President Laura Roslin. Over on Colonial One, Roslin prepares for her first face-to-face meeting with Adama since the detente that they reached in the pilot episode. Roslin is annoyed by protocol, but she figures Adama likes it, and that will make him easier to deal with. Boomer knows nothing about why she was wandering around with explosives. She sneaks off and confides in the capable but irritable hands of Chief Tyrol, and tells him what is up. Tyrol freaks out, tells her to turn them in. I can't, says Boomer. They'll think I stole them. Tyrol theorizes someone is setting her up to take the fall, and he will take care of everything. Back on Galactica, Roslin is giving a speech thanking the troops. Adama shows her the ship's water recycling, which is 100% effective. Roslin says, Adama thinks I'm an idiot. Actually, no, Apollo reassures her. He is trying to make you feel like you're the president. Really, said Roslin. Huh. Explosion! Every water tank on the port side of the ship is ruptured, venting Galactica's water 100% into space. In the briefing room, Adama orders the fleet to emergency rations, and they try to figure out how to find water, how to get water, and how to make everyone not be mad at them after this crisis.
How to make water.
How to make
Pee in this cup.
They never did bring up urine recyc.
I think that was implied.
Ty outlines their predicament. Basically, they're not likely to find water easily. Most planets are just barren rocks and whatnot. At the briefing, Tyrol comes up. Tyrol has led a mission to try to figure out why this happened. He gives the report a lot of inconclusive evidence, and he chooses to slip in at this point that there are 6 detonators unaccounted for, which he dutifully reported to the Master of Arms. But due to bad record keeping, we just may never know what happened to them. Real sad. Tyrol leaves, and Adama kicks off the secret executive session. What do we do about the Cylons who look like us now? They agree to keep it secret to avoid a panic. Rosalind asks Baltar about the Cylon detector he promised to make during the pilot. After a brief and unnecessary mindfuck with number 6, Baltar bullshits his way through an answer. Adama interrupts and said, "You're very smart, but you need help. Big help. Staff, resources. I'm going to assign Lieutenant Gaeta, who seems to have all the jobs on the ship anyway."
I know, he's not busy, right?
Yeah.
He's the Jared Kushner of the show. He has every
Kushner
job.
of Battlestar. And now his job is Gaius Baltar Jr. Boomer goes out for water. She and the chief have a quiet, tense talk. I didn't do this. It's important you believe me. I do believe you.
Fool.
But they're trying too hard to believe each other. Adama and Rosalind talk in Adama's quarters. They chit-chat about books. In a character detail I like, Rosalind likes terrible-sounding mysteries like Murder on Pycon. Adama gives her a copy of a book called Dark Day. It's a gift, he says. Never lend books.
True.
Elsewhere, Gaeta fanboys out at the chance to work with the famous Gaius Baltar. Baltar is annoyed because people are now going to be realizing what a fraud and traitor he is. He shakes Gaeta by going into a card game with Starbuck. He does that thing where it's like, I have no money, but my jacket is ridiculously expensive. Huh? Look at this. Huh? All right. I'm gonna win everything now. And it's the most obnoxious thing I've ever seen, but it works. And Gaeta leaves him alone.
Oh, I thought you meant it works in making him look like the biggest asshole you've ever seen, because it does.
It works in that way too. I realize I might hate Baltar more in this scene than I hate him in any other action he takes later in the series combined. But that's just how life goes when you're Gaius Baltar. Out in the Viper, Boomer and Crashdown looking for water. They scan. Crashdown finds nothing. Boomer finds water, but for some reason, she thinks she is not. But she has a feeling. She calls for another sweep. Again, water, but she's having trouble saying it. Reflexively, she reaches down to the bottom of her seat where there's an explosive. Oh no! Her hand is over the button.
How did Eddington do this?
How did Eddington pull this off? The detonator is a changeling. Who will win out? I wonder if changelings could do that. Who will win out? Cylon, Boomer, or human Boomer? Finally, she bursts out, "I have positive contact!" The fleet goes nuts. The CIE explodes like they just landed somebody on the moon. Boomer looks down, sees the explosive seemingly for the first time, and realizes what she almost did. Later on, Colonial 1, Rosalind and Apollo talk about shooting down the Olympic carrier. I can't stop thinking about it. But, a man's got to do crap and other crap like that, and it's all a bunch of crap. Rosalind responds with a story about the former President Adar, who kept all the names of the people who he killed by accident in a drawer. It's actually a lot more touching than that, than I just made it sound. But long story short, she doesn't have a desk, she has a pocket, and in her pocket is a card that says Olympic Carrier. And with that, Rosalind asks Apollo to be her military advisor, an advisor on the military, on protocol, and on Daddy. He asks who's going to tell him. She says, I think that should be you. Boomer and Tyrol hide away and kiss. I needed that, says Boomer. Tyrol reassures her, it's going to be fine. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. They hug. I better go, says Boomer. But since that is an anticlimactic final line, the camera zooms in on Boomer like 4 times and plays tense music as the show ends.
And then Odo says, "We're everywhere."
Everywhere. P.S. Cylon occupied Caprica.
Oh, yeah.
Hilo and Sharon are kicking back. Sharon is a Cylon pretending to be Boomer. Oh no. Why did you come back for me, Sharon, says Hilo. I couldn't leave you behind. Let's leave it at that, says Sharon. They pick up a colonial signal, discovering that there are human lives on this planet. They hug. They totally want to start making out.
Ditto.
But they don't.
They should have. I shipped them hard.
Cylon occupied Caprica is weird. It's almost like a break from... It's almost like a serial that's kind of a break from the human drama.
I've seen the series many times through, and I'm trying to remember how I would have felt the first time, when it first aired, seeing this, and trying to figure out where they were going. It's at this point in the story, it's a little like, okay, what are they doing? Is this a Cylon plot? What is the point of setting up Hilo and Sharon as potential lovers?
Do they have a plan? One might ask.
Do they?
Yes, yeah. As I've been assured.
I think they kind of did. I think this was a little bit of a plan on the writer's part, because I'm sure they knew at some point, okay, we're going to have to pay off this 2 people just doing the survival part of a show on a ravaged planet, full of invaders. They know that has to go somewhere eventually. So I think they knew eventually they had to go somewhere with it.
Yeah, I have tried completely to divorce myself from, and I have a plan. Just because
the best thing
I think that the most interesting stuff about this show anyway is the evolution. This is one that I didn't really think of much when I was watching the show originally, but I did find I kind of enjoyed it. Coming after 33, I think it suffers from that comparison. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of crucial stuff happens here.
Yeah, I think this episode, this is an episode that is building towards things that they can capitalize on later. Kind of like how in the Adversary, introduces this, changeling threat. This is an episode that's, near the very, very beginning of the season, so it's building things up for them to capitalize on later.
Yeah, and it is a tough act to follow 33, which is, just a phenomenal hour of television, with something that is more of a slow burn character drama. What I find most interesting is that obviously Boomer, at least at this stage in the game, is not wicked, is not aware, like as far as I can tell anyway. All the things that she's done, the bombing, stealing the detonators, all of this stuff she's done subconsciously. So it's almost like there's something, unlike, say, the Changelings, they're obviously very aware of their wicked deeds, and that's the point. But with Boomer, it's as though her brain shuts off, her conscious brain shuts off. She goes and does evil shit, and then wakes up, soaking wet.
Yeah, hours later. Still thinking
hours
it's
later.
Evening the night before.
Right. So I find that really interesting. So you can't so much judge Boomer for these things. And I find that very interesting. But who you can kind of judge and critique, I think, is the Chief.
Oh, yeah. Chief doing everything wrong. Thinking with his penis every moment of the day. I took some notes watching this episode, and I think multiple times I just wrote, "Chief, report this, you ass." Like if Chief O'Brien can do it for his boyfriend Bashir, you can do it for Boomer, because this is a safety issue. The thing is, I also don't think there's such a big difficulty in comparing these episodes, because in Deep Space Nine, everyone knows the Changelings are the threat, and when they know that the Changelings specifically are the threat. And in this episode, not everyone knows Cylons look like people yet, only select few. I even think in that boardroom scene where I thought like Roslyn and Adama and whoever else is in the room are like, so how many people know? And I almost felt like Apollo should have raised his hand and said, "No, what?" Because I don't think he knew yet.
On the other hand, look at how it looks from the pilots. Like, Boomer jumps to this right away. You've heard the rumors, Cylons look like us now. Mm-hmm. Like, and I feel like that is, like, in terms of keeping military secrets, sure, only the 3 Marines knew, but, they got treated by sickbay types. They could have interacted with any number of people who sort of put 2 and 2 together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and I always find that leaders think that things are more secret than they are, like always.
Which is why I gotta give more shit to the chief. Damn it,
Which is
Chief.
why, yeah. Well, what fascinates me is his excuse. He's like, all right, clearly, Boomer, don't worry. Clearly, someone drugged you. Clearly, someone is setting you up to take the fall. And it's like, really?
That then you should report that.
Who would be drugging her anyway?
Right.
Like,
yeah, and I do wonder does Boomer know she's a Cylon? Like,
I think she
is there
fears it.
I think she fears it, but like, is there a part of her that does know it and she just can't consciously acknowledge it?
I think if she knows it, she's repressed it. And now it's just a matter of, oh fuck, am I one? No, I can't be one.
Well,
and that she's more in denial.
I mean, is that just part of her programming?
Could
I
be.
mean, obviously it would be, I guess, but it seems to me that having Boomer do this bombing in this way seems kind of short-sighted on the part of the Cylons to me. That you have someone who is a colonial officer, a fairly high-ranking one, or one of some importance on the ship. You could do any number of dastardly things with this person placed here. But having her do the bombing, which, yeah, that is dastardly and sure destabilizes the fleet. But I don't know, I feel like there's better ways to use a spy that you have placed in this way than just like doing a random bombing that, at the end of the day was an inconvenience for a day.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of Deep Space Nine episodes, Homefront and Paradise Lost, where changelings are just stirring up trouble. They're not even really accomplishing much, except that they're stirring up trouble, which makes the Federation really like on their not A game, the opposite of A game, their F game. They're on their F game, because literally like 2 changelings did something funny one day, and I feel like that's a little bit what's happening in this episode, where it's like, okay, Cylon Boomer, same difference, is going to stir up some trouble to keep all the humans like frantic. Is the only way I can put that, because I don't think like there's no what are the other opportunities? Kill Adama?
But like what is the Cylons' plan? Right? Like,
you're funny, Jake.
Yeah, I think we have to assume at this point that what the Cylons want to do is study humanity. I think this is like, what do they do without water? I mean, it also is a good, certainly things like shortages have a lot of resonance right now. And one of my things I'm curious about with this review is like, how does this play in 2021 as opposed to like right after 9/11? Certainly right after 9/11.
That's a good question.
Yeah, like certainly right after 9/11, things like blowing up water supplies were a major concern.
I also happened to notice, just in reading up about this episode, the tiny bit that I did, that the original plan was to not have it be a water shortage, but a paper shortage. Did you read this, Carl? What the fuck? Would we care? They have computers.
Oh, that's funny.
And I hate their paper anyway, because they do this thing, and it drives me nuts on Battlestar Galactica, where all their sheets of paper have the corners cut off, like they're all little stop signs. And it drives me nuts because it's really freaking silly looking.
I'm imagining a plot where they don't destroy the paper supply; they just destroy the machine that trims the sheets to have those corners. And they're like, "What are we gonna do? We can't use this rectangular paper. That's ridiculous."
Oh, that's funny. On a similar note, those cards look really hard to hold in the Triad game. I don't know. Water beats paper, I think.
Yeah.
And paper
I think
beats
it makes
rock.
a lot more sense.
Paper
Yeah,
beats
and
rock.
in terms of, I think that was really interesting point you made, Carl, about the post 9/11 perspective, because I mean, at the end of the day, the series really is a 9/11 series in a lot of ways, or at least it starts out that way. That I think that it does still continue. I think it continues to resonate in a similar way. I mean, I think we're less concerned about terrorist attacks today than we were in the early 2000s. But I mean, obviously, we have other things to worry about now. I'm less worried about a terrorist blowing up the water supply. If this had been like a virus plot,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be a different show today.
If this were made in 2022, the Cylons would have released a virus on the ship, right?
Exactly. Oh, as an aside, did you guys see that they're talking about another BSG reboot?
Yep.
Ish
They're
coming up?
rebooting it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's on the back burner again, as of a couple months ago. But
it should be there. That's where it should be. It should be on the back burner.
yeah.
Well,
I don't trust another reboot. This one was great. Don't screw it up.
It would be rolling a hard 6, definitely.
So is Gaius Baltar. Hey!
Yeah.
Hello.
Let's talk about Laura Roslin.
Oh, she's great.
This is kind of her first regular day as being the president. What kind of leader is she coming across as?
A competent one, which is
it's
not a lot to
interesting.
ask for.
They continue to play a bit of conflict between Rosalind and Adama. And I think that she does a good job of holding her own. I think the scene in which the chief and others are giving their report on the water situation, and then she's like, "Oh, can you speculate as to whatever it was?" And Adama was like, "Oh, I asked my my officers not to speculate without all the facts." And she's like, "Yeah, do it anyway." And whether or not that was wise or not, I don't know. But it's a good assertion of her authority to do that. She is ultimately the commander-in-chief at this point. It's her prerogative to ask for something like that. And it's good to see Adama realize that, okay, yeah, I should back down and let this proceed. It's a little thing, but it's a good example of her asserting her leadership.
Yeah, I like it because it's kind of it's a serpent with two heads. And one head is military and Adama, and the other head is politics and Roslin. And the two need to be on the same wavelength at all times and not biting each other. So they kind of both have to have the same amount of power in that regard. Like, you notice Gaeta doesn't want to tell Roslin what his hypothetical situation is until Adama gives him the nod, says, yes, listen to her in this case.
Right.
I give you my permission to speculate.
Well, this is what is interesting about it to me. Adama has clearly made a decision to back the constitutional order. You hear Ty, he's like, school teacher, But Adama knows the constitutional order must endure. One thing I like is that not only does she do that in the briefing room, but she does it just a few minutes after Apollo tells her, this is for you. He doesn't like this, but he thinks this will strengthen you as a president. And she takes that information and she goes, all right, this helped me understand like the land that I am walking on. And her next step is to escalate and do what a president does. Like, she has this way of cutting through the crap in a way that does not like diminish her own standing, that I think is really valuable for a politician. Yeah,
and I loved also the step of Adama doing the pomp. The way Lee says it to Rosalind was like, "Oh, he did this for your benefit." to make you feel like the president, but I think equally to that, it was to show everyone on the ship that she was the president.
Exactly.
People like Ty, who, as you said, he jokes and snickers about the fact that she's not, "Oh, it's just a school teacher," all that. There's probably a lot of that.
Yeah.
And also comparing this with The Adversary, we see both episodes start with everybody in dress uniforms. And I hate both these dress uniforms. I think they all look really freaking goofy.
Oh, you don't like the gold ropes?
Oh, the gold ropes are, oh my gosh. What? Who decides this? That this is how you look when you're dressing up, as if you want to have ropes on you, like tie in knots whenever you want, if you're bored. What is this?
Oh, God.
And then Cisco with the long dress with gold adornment in the top. I just don't like dress uniforms on any of these goddamn shows.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've seen what, like, actual military dress uniforms look like. They look equally ridiculous.
That's probably
these these are all accurate to reality.
Man.
Oh, you're so right. Yeah, that must be what makes it so solemn. They're like that. People come out in ridiculous dress uniforms, and they're like, "All right, nobody laugh. Nobody laugh, and I'll take power from you not laughing."
I was thinking today. This is only tangentially related, but like, like British barristers, like the British legal
the wigs.
system.
Oh God, with the powdered wigs.
The powdered wigs.
No.
It's like how could you argue a case in front of?
How
could you argue a case wearing a ridiculous wig in front of a judge wearing a more ridiculous wig without losing your shit? So good on the Brits for not losing it. But anyway.
I'd lose it. I would be giggling the whole time.
Adama has something really great to say when there's the suggestion that we declare martial law and put Marines into the fleet. And he says that when the police are there to serve the populace, and the military is there to protect them from outside threats, and when the military becomes the police, then the people tend to become the threats. And I think that is really apropos of that post 9/11 period.
That's excellent.
And continues to this day. Even we talk about the militarization of the police force, and that's the exact shit that Adama is talking about in that scene.
Big time. It reflects too when Trump had his little coup attempt last year. We know that generals were saying things very much like that Adama speech to try to talk him down. When we had the George Floyd protests earlier than that, this quote was actually passed around as a protest of the militarization, how the government was going hard against protesters there. It just sort of reminds me that, like, when there's a coup or a coup attempt, like it always just seems to fall to the military. Like, are you gonna back the constitutional order, or are you gonna go rogue?
Right.
And this is one of Adama's best qualities, I think. Not only that he is willing to accept it, but like he understands it. And his father was a civil liberties lawyer and everything. It's very easy to imagine people in this situation just sort of defaulting to Mad Max fiefdom rule like the second day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that would be an interesting something to explore in a reboot. I think if they were going to do a reboot, in a I'll call it a post-Trump America, would we end up in a situation where there would be like people, like civilians, like demanding the martial law, or like saying
sounds very Cardassian.
Yeah, true, right?
Yeah, I think that's the highlight. That's like the thing that science fiction can bring to these kinds of topics, is to make statements about politics and military and name the flavor of the week of what's happening in real life, and be able to like explore that without like just making a politics show. You're able to like see what the effects are on human beings or aliens. Aliens are fun too. We like them. Cardassians for the win.
Yeah, and this show waved that flag as hard as it could.
Did.
We're running out of time. Is there anything else you want to say about Water?
But I did want to just mention, so there's that scene where Baltar puts his jacket up as a bet in a card game, and it occurred to me that like that jacket is fucking priceless, right? Like there's no like unless one of these ships happens to be a textile mill, in the fleet, then there's not going to be jackets. Like no one's making new jackets now. And like maybe eventually there will be a textile mill ship, but until then, like having a nice jacket, is worth a lot more than he was going to win in that card game, I'm sure.
Well, he says the same thing about his cigarettes when he gives a cigarette to Starbuck and says, "Oh, this is a special cigarette, rolled directly out of someone's asshole, and it's the best thing that you're ever going to smoke, and there's not going to be any more like it." And she smokes it like,
I really don't like Baltar and Starbuck flirting. I understand
it's a little gross, yeah.
But I don't like Starbuck. Stay away.
Yeah, I don't like Gaius flirting with anyone. I think every scene with Six is just so cringy. And I wonder, it's like the element of Battlestar Galactica that I find the most irritating, just because Six is always scantily clad or naked, often just naked, and we don't see any of the male Cylons. When we learn who the male Cylons are, we don't get to see we don't get all the eye candy from them. Boo.
Yeah, definitely not fair.
And also just a point about Baltar and his flirting. He reminds me very much of early seasons Julian,
Hardcore.
in that he is, always, he's just a dog. And the difference, though, I think, and the reason I accept Baltar more than I accepted early seasons Julian, is that early seasons Julian is supposed to be a hero. Early seasons Julian is supposed to be someone that we're supposed to look up to and admire, whereas Baltar is always from the off is a scumbag, and we are supposed to see him that way. And sure, they'll develop the character in the future, but like he's a bad guy in this show at this point, and having him be seen as a creep serves his character, I think, at this point. And like I didn't like him flirting with Starbuck either, but I'm like, okay, that's a Baltar thing to do. If it were Julian Bashir, he would have done the same thing, and it would have felt even ickier.
Yeah, because the writers would be treating it like, oh, he's such a good guy.
That is what's kind of nice about Battlestar in a way, is like you are allowed to come to your own conclusions. Baltar is sort of the scumbag we need. I don't know if there is a character like that on track. He's not the scumbag we want, but he's the scumbag we need.
Yeah, it's fascinating because in Deep Space Nine, we see the characters develop, but they all start off, with maybe exception of Julian, as very moral people who already start off pretty solid as characters. All of these characters on Battlestar Galactica come with their own trauma, with their own, like, brokenness. Every single character has something that they're going to work from in their own way, and it's going to be very fascinating to watch how they develop differently than a Star Trek character can develop.
These episodes were The Adversary, Deep Space Nine, and Water, Battlestar Galactica. Who wins? Who do you think has the better week when it comes to the topic of spies?
Ooh.
Here's the thing. I don't think our topic was spies this week.
Really?
I think our topic is sabotage.
Ah.
Because I don't really think of Boomer. I almost said Boimler. God damn it. I don't really think of Boomer as a spy. Caprica Boomer, kind of more a spy, but we don't see a ton of her this week. And we're seeing more things being laid out for future episodes. But I think in terms of who does a better sabotage, Battlestar does a better sabotage.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a tie. Not a Saul tie, just a
I love it. I love it so much.
School teacher.
No, I'm going to give it a tie because I think that both of these episodes are phenomenal in the sense that they are setting up some really great stuff to happen down the line, and they're both setting the scene in a way for what the conflicts to come will be.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
That is fair. I am going to give it to Battlestar as well, just because I think this episode accomplishes so much more with what it has to do than the Adversary does, and that's not even a knock on the Adversary at all. But like the things that are emerging are completely fascinating and will continue to be so.
Yeah, I think the thing we learn in the Adversary, that changelings are everywhere, is fabulous for moving forward with season 4. Although I remember in season 4, we mostly do Klingon stuff for most of that season.
It takes a while for it to pay off.
And then we're like, oh, remember changelings? And we're like, oh, right, we forgot about changelings. How can you forget about changelings?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the difference. I think that like Battlestar is, by its very nature and the way it was created, was designed to be a serialized show. Whereas like Star Trek was going like kicking and screaming into that serialization. So the fact that they even got to the point where we had an episode that set up something to happen way, way down the line and continue throughout the series was a feat in and of itself. So the fact that, it takes us like half a season before we get to, Homefront is, still, I appreciate it. And I appreciate that they did it. And I appreciate the setup that they had done earlier in the series to even get to the Adversary.
Thank you so much for being on Battlespace 9, which I guess is going to be the name of the podcast.
I like it. I like it.
I think it's great. I support it.
Where can you find your show and the other things you work on?
Yeah, so our podcast that Jake and I, you'll remember, I think last week you had our other co-hosts, Chris and Caitlin. Our other podcast is called A Star to Steer Her By. If you just search for that, I'm sure you'll find it pretty much anywhere, because we're on all the podcast applications, but our home base is SoundCloud. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. We're usually there somewhere. I've been doing a ton of work with our blog on Tumblr. So the Tumblr is sshbpodcast.com. And check out, we have so much content up right now, it's absurd. Where else are we, Jake? Anywhere else? Good.
Wherever fine podcasts are listened.
If you want to hear more of my stuff, you can check out my radio play, Fine-Tuned Universe. Just search for Fine-Tuned Universe. It's a 6-part serial story that takes place on the far side of the moon, that Jake directed, and our friend Chris, from A Star to Steer Her By, is in, and that's a really good time.
I agree. I listened to that shortly after moving here to Minnesota.
Oh, I'm glad you listened, Carl.
And I can heartily recommend Fine-Tuned Universe. Tune in next week in this Fine-Tuned Universe, Battlespace 9, where the episodes will be Deep Space Nine Shikar and Battlestar Galactica Bastille Day. And the theme is Champions of the People. For Battlespace 9, I've been Carl.
This has been Ames.
And this has been Jake.
Take care.
We're everywhere.
Every single where.